Hey. General Flynn's remarks. I'm just going to stick them right here.
Yep. And you can let him know there's waters down here for him.
Great.
Yep.
In 1597, Francis Bacon coined the phrase, "Knowledge is power." Data is not a currency to store and never use. Knowledge must become action. Applied data insights result in better lives, national security, and innovation. The possibilities are endless. The accumulation and application of knowledge has expanded from a few scholars to entire populations. Knowledgeable citizens have created improved technologies, gained scientific insights, and established new nations. Today's decision makers must convert knowledge to action quickly, securely, and accurately, while not becoming overwhelmed by a torrent of data. SAIC connects you with the right data for the right people at the right time, helping you make informed decisions. Citizen data scientists go from collecting knowledge to knowing what actions to take for quick and effective outcomes in any domain.
Yep, I told his staff that they're for him right here. And then,
Ladies and gentlemen, please quickly move to your seats. The program will begin shortly.
Yeah, I'd say everybody's pretty much sitting. I'd go ahead and queue up.
am I good? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the afternoon's AFCEA Hawaii and International TechNet Indo-Pacific Conference lunch and keynote presentation. I'm Captain Sam Chung of Pacific Air Forces, and it's my pleasure to be your MC today. As a courtesy to our guests and fellow professionals, we request that you silence all communication devices. We would now like to take the opportunity to recognize those who are unable to join us today. Those who have served, those currently serving, and those that will serve as members of the uniformed services are ever mindful that the sweetness of enduring peace has always been tainted by the bitterness of personal sacrifice. We are compelled to never forget that while we enjoy our daily pleasures, there are others who have endured and may still be enduring the agonies of pain, deprivation, and internment. We call attention to this table, which occupies a place of dignity and honor. It is set for one, symbolizing the fact that some are missing from our ranks. They are referred to as POWs and MIAs. We call them comrades. They are unable to be with us, with their loved ones and families today, so we join together to pay our humble tribute to them and to bear witness to their continued absence. This table, set for one, is small, symbolizing the fragility of one prisoner, alone against his or her suppressors. The tablecloth is white, symbolic of the purity of their intentions to respond to their country's call to arms. The single red rose in the vase signifies the blood that many have shed and sacrificed to ensure the freedom of our beloved United States of America. This rose reminds us of the family and friends of our missing comrades who keep the faith while awaiting their return. The yellow ribbon of the vase represent the yellow ribbons worn on the lapels of the thousands who demand with unyielding determination a proper accounting of our comrades who are not among us today. A slice of lemon on the plate reminds us of their bitter fate. The salt sprinkled on the plate reminds us of the countless fallen tears of families as they wait. The glass is inverted. They cannot enjoy this meal with us at this point in time. The chair is empty. They are not here. The candle is reminiscent of the light of hope, which lives in our hearts to illuminate the way home, away from their captors to the open arms of a grateful nation. Let us remember and never forget their sacrifices. I would like to ask Linda Newton, SES retired, Board of Directors, AFCEA Hawaii, to come on stage.
And I'd like to ask Rashonda McKee and Brian Silver to join me on the stage for the STEM grant presentation. So we're happy today to honor Brian Silver as one of our AFCEA Hawaii STEM grant winners. Brian Silver is a STEM teacher at Kalani High School for the past 16 years. He is a teacher, robotics counselor, and aeronautics mentor, and he manages at least 4 programs in addition to his regular classes. He manages 3 robotics teams, and they're upstairs in room 304 this afternoon if you want to go see them, hackathons, and the Innovation Station. So the Innovation Station is a program here in Hawaii that works to introduce elementary school students to STEM and spark an interest in the field. The program is a portable STEM lab packed with STEM equipment, 16 3D printers, 3 laser cutters, and STEM lessons. The Kalani High School robotics team, Team Magma, reaches teachers through the Innovation Station, coaching them on how to use these machines and enhance the learning process of their students and connecting the bridge between STEM and the classroom. They target students, teachers, and school districts with the intention to implement changes in curriculum as well as to spark the passion with the students. Brian and his robotics teams make regular appearances at TechNet in the STEM Innovation Room, and the Kalani High School Team Magma has proudly qualified and represented Hawaii at the first Robotics World Championship 12 times. It's no wonder that he is also Hawaii's 2025 Teacher of the Year and will represent Hawaii in the 2025 National Teacher of the Year program. No? So, we just, you want a picture? You could call up Josh? Okay. Okay, sorry. Anything else? Yep, that's it.
Thank you, Linda, and our grant recipient, Brian Silver. I would like to now ask Josh Jackson, Executive Vice President, SAIC, to come up to the stage.
Aloha. Welcome to the luncheon keynote at TechNet. I'm Josh Jackson, Executive Vice President at SAIC, and I have the great pleasure of leading SAIC's portfolio supporting the Army. And we're really a proud partner in supporting AFCEA TechNet. And I think this particular dialogue is really important, an exchange of great ideas between industry and government, such a critical component of what makes our country great and what makes our solutions in a very competitive world even better. At SAIC, we're laser focused on integrating emerging technology to solve some of the most pressing challenges across the Department of Defense. And I would say that in particular here, as we think about this particular theater, some of those challenges are very unique given the amount of collaboration and the great distances that we've got to travel. Things like next generation command and control, data interoperability, security, those are things that really make us excited at SAIC and really tackling those tough challenges. These things really energize us. So I'm happy to welcome you to this keynote on behalf of AFCEA International as well as on behalf of AFCEA Hawaii, and look forward to General Flynn's comments during lunch. I know, having heard him in the past, it'll be a great engaging perspective on some of the challenges that we can help them with. Thank you.
AFCEA Hawaii has been blessed with many outstanding individuals who, through their exemplary leadership, have made it a model for other chapters to emulate. May I ask the current and former presidents of AFCEA Hawaii to rise for recognition. Please join me in a round of applause to these outstanding leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, please continue to enjoy your meal. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor to introduce the Commander, United States Army Pacific, General Charles Flynn. General Flynn has dedicated many years of exemplary service to the nation, demonstrating outstanding leadership and unwavering commitment to duty. His contributions have been instrumental in advancing the mission and readiness of the U.S. Army in the Pacific region. For those interested in learning more about his distinguished career, his full biography is available on the AFCEA TechNet Indo-Pacific 24 app. If you have any questions during his presentation, please text them to the email address displayed on the screen. Please now join me in a warm welcome to General Charles Flynn, Commander, U.S. Army Pacific.
Wow, these lights are crazy bright. Thanks for the short intro. I'm glad you didn't read the whole bio, so that's very helpful. And thanks for being here. Thanks for bringing your ideas, and I appreciate the time you're investing in the work that we have ahead of us out here, because there's certainly no shortage of challenges that we have in this theater. I'm going to go with two parts here. I'm going to run through a couple of slides just to warm things up about, give you a sense of the security environment, give you a sense of the operations that are underway, and also give you a sense of, at least from my perspective, what the U.S. Army of the Pacific, as the Theater Joint Land Component Commander for U.S. Indo-PACOM, is doing and has been doing and will continue to do. And then the other part, after I'm done with that, I'm just going to walk you through a couple of points that I want to make that may stimulate some questions from you all. And I look forward to that part of this talk very much, because I did this a couple of years ago, and I really like, the back and forth, and maybe I can give you some of my thoughts on some of the really hard challenges that we're confronted with here, and your questions would be helpful in pointing us that way. Okay. So with that as an opener, if you would just go to the first slide. So I just want to point out that, U.S. Army Pacific has a rich history out here. More campaign streamers on the Army colors have been earned out here than all other theaters combined. And here's the reason why I'm bringing this up. I'm bringing this up because that oftentimes people look at the map and they see a lot of water and a lot of air, and they think that this is an air and maritime theater, and it is not. It's a joint theater. It's got joint and multinational and combined challenges, and it's only going to be solved by joint, combined, and multinational solutions. And the U.S. Army is an important part of that joint force, and the contributions that we make are central to the success out here. The second point I want to make on this particular slide is 80 years ago, we ceded terrain. We gave terrain up. In fact, we got defeated. In fact, that defeat occurred all the way out here in, I'll just refer to it as the third island chain, but certainly in Hawaii. And it took 2.5 years to get back that space, that terrain. In fact, this week is the 80th anniversary of MacArthur returning to Leyte. So the point I'm making is we cannot cede any domain out here, all 5 of them. So we can't cede any domain, and we can't cede or give up any terrain or space, because we gave it up before, and we paid a terrible, terrible price in blood and treasure to get it back. Next build, or next slide. Challenges. Okay, so the entire European continent fits right in there. Okay, so this is a huge theater, as denoted there, more than half the planet, surface of the planet. And I would just say that oftentimes when I have visitors come here, I go back to Washington, D.C., you can't talk about this theater unless you're talking about it over a map, because the geometry of the geography matters out here. In addition to that, you see all those starbursts out there, those flashpoints. There are numerous flashpoints that are happening right now, and the challenges in the security environment are steep. Next slide. This is one of them, but one of them. And you can see, I would just take your eyes immediately to the comment over on the far right side in 21 by President Xi. And then for those unfolding right now. And so these things are happening, and I guess the point, that I made last week in Washington, D.C. at AUSA, I'm going to make it again here, is that I came back out here in my second assignment in 2014 as the commander of the 25th Division, and I have basically been out here minus 3 years back in Washington, D.C. as the G357, staring at this problem for more than a decade. And the difference between what the PRC has built, is building, and continues to build, and the way that they are training in 2014 compared to, or in 2024 compared to 2014 is extraordinary. It's a remarkable and historical build of what they refer to as an A2AD arsenal, but maybe more importantly is that in 2015 they reorganized, their modernization caught up with their reorganization, and then their training, they put training in place, training centers in place to stitch together their reorganization and modernization. And it's not just that they have the largest army. It's not just that they have 200% more shipbuilding capacity in the United States. It's in space, it's in cyber, it's in nuclear. It's in every warfighting function, in every domain, and across every service, and they're still going. And so I guess the point I'm making on the previous slide and this slide is that while Taiwan is a flashpoint, there is a larger game that's going on out here, and it goes from Oceania, the sub-region where the plates of Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia come together, and sits as the doorstep to the United States. It's against the homeland. America's Day starts in Guam. The second island chain is where there are U.S. citizens, U.S. nationals, and U.S. territories that we're responsible for to defend. Northern Marianas, Marshall Islands, Federated States of Micronesia. You go up to the Arctic, there's pressure in the Arctic. I always say that Russia is in the Arctic Circle looking out, China's outside the Arctic Circle looking in, and the United States sort of has a foot astride each. We've got challenges in Northeast Asia, particularly with North Korea right now, and then what the Russians are doing, and the matchup, and you're seeing this in open source between what's going on between DPRK and Russia. Taiwan Strait, South China Sea, East China Sea, West Phil Sea, you name it. Southeast Asia, line of actual control, South Asia, countries like Myanmar and Bangladesh side by side with challenges, Rohingya refugee camp. I could go on and on. The point I'm making is, and I'll use a hockey analogy for you hockey fans out there, Taiwan is the puck, and sometimes we have to make sure that we're playing the entire game and playing and attacking and defending and positioning away from the puck, because the game's going to be won around the fringes of the puck. Next slide, and it's being won by movement. So where do I sit in all this? I'm a component commander for Admiral Sam Paparo, the commander of U.S. Indo-Pacific. And I am also a Title X Army Service Component Commander. Those four boxes there is what a theater army represents in the U.S. Army. So we have to train and be prepared and get certified as a Combined Joint Task Force. I'm the Theater Joint Force Land Component Commander, and I'm also can be a Combined Joint Force Land Component Commander for multinational forces. And then the fourth role, that's purely green, is I'm an Army Service Component Commander operating as the Title 10 authority in the theater for the Secretary of the Army. And you can see the boxes down the bottom, the roles that we have to play, which are primarily purple on the left side. Those are the three warfighting hats that I wear. And then on the right side is primarily the Army hat that I wear that, plays a role in structure, plays a role in POM development and inventory of all systems. Next slide. So I'm going to build a couple things here and talk about our operational approach out here. Our ends is positional advantage. That's where all of this strategy needs to be. Why? Because we have work to do in positioning, and I'd say at least my component, the land forces, as part of the joint force in the region. And then there's four ways that we're going about trying to improve and create positional advantage forward against those threats that I mentioned earlier. First, build. So the first way is we have to organize our force and be ready to fight. Now, what are those boxes depicted? First of all, many of you might be surprised, there are 10 flag officer commands in the Army in Hawaii alone. That represents 25% of the U.S. Army. And when allocated forces come on either an EDRI or a rotation, U.S. Army Pacific can be somewhere between 27 and 30% of the Army, okay? We're twice the size of U.S. Army Europe. Twice the size. So if you think about it, it's 25% of the U.S. Army out here with three primary locations where we're based out of: Joint Base Lewis McChord, here in Hawaii, and then up in Alaska, and then of course we have 22 to 24,000 on pen, depending on what time of the year you pick it out, with 8th Army, 2nd Infantry Division, and the 19th ESC. We have a smaller force in Japan, but I would also tell you that there's things about the Army in Japan that many of you don't know. We have 2 TPY-2 radars there. We have a Patriot Battalion in Okinawa. We have a regional support group in Okinawa. U.S. Army Japan is in Camp Zama. Our forward position watercraft, we run 4 ports there. 2 and 1 down in Okinawa, Port Naha, Yokohama North Docks in Tokyo Bay, and then we have 2 terminals down in Hiroshima in the Kure area with a bunch of ammunition supply points. There's a large enterprise gateway in Camp Buckner in Okinawa that basically is a ground terminal for all the SATCOM. I could go on and on. I always often refer to U.S. Army Japan as a welterweight first-round fighter because it's small, but it's got a lot of capability in it, and that is really important, that position there. Next build. So second way, generating readiness and training at the Joint Pacific Multinational Readiness Center. So very proud of this. I'll talk about it a little bit more, but first time in 50 years, more than 50 years, that the Army has created a combat training center outside of what we had in Europe and the 2 that we had in the continental United States. We have 2 campuses to this, 1 here in Hawaii, spread across 8 island archipelago. The training area that we have on the Big Island, the Pohakaloa training area, is actually larger than the island of Guam. Okay, that's about 130 miles from here. And that is actually further away than the coast of China to Taiwan. So 8 island archipelago, tropic jungle, surrounded by joint assets. We have a northern campus in Alaska. For those of you that are not familiar with that, that's basically the Yukon and the Donley training area. It's a massive piece of property. It's 3 times the size of the National Training Center, and all the airspace, and all the joint assets. And it's mountainous, extreme cold weather, high altitude. Again, those 2 campuses in Alaska and Hawaii, they look just like the region. And we match all the forces up between Joint Base Lewis-McChord, Alaska and Hawaii to match the region. And then, of course, JPMRC has a 3rd leg to it, which is JPMRC X. That's an exportable version that we take into the region. And it's gone into the region 21 and 22. It went to Indonesia, to Garuda Shield. In 23, it went to Townsville in Australia, where we actually linked up the simulation. So we had a live virtual and constructive feed down in Townsville in the northeast corner of Australia, where they have a combat training center. Last year, it went into an EDCA site in the Philippines in a place called Fort Magsaysay. Magsaysay is almost central Luzon. And again, that's where they're building a combat training center. There's another combat training center in Thailand in a place called Lopburi, and the 2 locations in Indonesia at the southern tip of Sumatra and the eastern tip of the island of Java is where Indonesia is building a training center. So this is an enormous opportunity for us to be able to pull forces together, joint forces and multinational forces. I mean, we just had almost 10,000 here in Hawaii with 12 nations participating. And lots of joint assets from DDGs, surface action groups, to Marine Littoral Regiment, to ISR, to tankers, to a forcible entry. We flew 11 aircraft from Alaska on the 11th Airborne, flew from Alaska and did a jump into the Paakaloa training area on the Big Island, stayed over there, did some initial entry operations. 3 days later, turned around and did another 7-hour in-flight rig drop into Alaska to the Yukon Donley training area. That's the 2nd year in a row we've done that. Anyways, the second way that we're going about business is we're generating readiness in the theater at 2 campuses instead of going back to the continental United States and training in Louisiana and California, which don't look anything like this region out here. We have to train in the environment and in the conditions surrounded by the joint force here in Hawaii and Alaska, and then it's got a 3rd leg that is extended into the region to our partners and allies. Next build. Next build is Operation Pathways, which is our 3rd way of campaigning. And Pathways is effectively, the definition of campaigning is the sequence and timing of operations, activities, and investments that meet U.S. national security and those of our allies and partners. So Pathways is effectively how we campaign. It's taken the more than 40 Army-to-Army and joint exercises and finding a way to apply the readiness that we built at JPMRC in the region, and we take it into various countries so that we can really do 3 things: improve interoperability and improve the confidence of our allies and partners, which is a way of ensuring. Second thing that we're doing is we're training as a joint force, so we're increasing our joint interoperability and joint readiness. And the third thing that we're doing is we're denying key terrain, human and physical terrain, from our adversaries, which are out there every day trying to take that terrain from us. Again, we can't cede any of this. And so Pathways gives us the ability to organize properly, generate readiness at our Hawaii and Alaskan campuses, and then the extended campuses that we have in the region, and then we apply that readiness in the region to, again, increase interoperability, confidence, increase joint readiness, assure, and then finally to deter, because we're taking away the adversary's ability to attack or confront or take terrain, both human and physical terrain. The last build is the build of joint interior lines. And the interior lines are to empower the joint force. What this does is this gives us staying power, it gives us operational endurance, it overcomes the strategic movement that we have to do, and this is really layering in 4 foundational capabilities that the Army provides at scale and at echelon. That's command and control, that is protection, and that is, in protection I mean integrated air and missile defense, engineering through mobility, counter-mobility, survivability, and medical. And then there's collection, and when I say collect, I could stand up here and say intel, but it's actually more than that, it's collection. Our ability to tie together a terrestrial layer with an aerial layer with a space layer, fuse that information, and be able to use that and then share that. That is vitally important to what we're doing out here. And then the last thing, the last of the 4 foundational capabilities is sustainment. You can see on there, there's a 2-star theater sustainment commander right here in Hawaii. We have a 1-star expeditionary sustainment commander in Korea. We have a 1-star expeditionary sustainment commander at Joint Base Lewis McChord with the Corps and 8th Army. And then there's a range of sustainment brigade and sustainment battalions below each one of those. So the 4 foundational capabilities to build those joint interior lines are command and control, collection, protection, and sustainment. And what we're really trying to do, again, is to build operational endurance, create reach for the joint force, have staying power, and then be able to distribute, disperse, network our forces in order to enable the joint force and our allies and partners from a position forward in the theater. Next build, or next slide. So let me just hit quickly these. I went into some detail, but there's a couple other pieces I want to put out here. So this is the first 2, organize and generate. Down the bottom left corner of this slide is another important element that we've been doing for the last couple of years. So this is the Unified Pacific Wargaming Series. It is matched to the Global Wargaming Series that the Navy has. So there's this Army and Navy campaigning and learning in wargaming that's been vitally important. In fact, when Sam Paparo was the PAC Fleet commander, he and I agreed to this because we came in as component commanders together. And I probably, as an Army guy, have more time in the Navy war game up in Newport, Rhode Island. I think I've been to 6. But the point I'm making is, what do war games do? They do 3 things for you. They test concepts, they test your capabilities, and then you make adjustments to your plans. And so this is a really important component of what we've been doing out here. I talked enough about the training center. Again, first time in more than 50 years, the Army's built a training center, and it's out here in the Pacific. Why? To keep forces out here, organize our forces out here, and generate readiness out here in the environment and in the conditions that most closely replicate those that the forces have to be able to operate in forward in the region. And then the last one, some of you may be aware of the warfighters that we do and have been doing in the Army. We're getting ready to do one in December, and we did one 2 years ago in Japan. This will be the second. So what we're doing is we're not doing a warfighter as an Army-only event. We're doing those warfighters as part of, in this case, Yamasakura in Japan. This warfighter is got First Corps, and they're matched with what's called the GCC, the Ground Component Commander, a 3-star command in Japan. Japan's bringing 2 regional armies into this and 4 divisions. On the U.S. side, there's 2 U.S. divisions, the 25th and the 11th Airborne Division. And then there's a 3rd division that we have in this, which is the 1st Australian Division. 3rd MEF plays in this down in Okinawa. And then this coming year is actually the first time we're going to have Philippine observers. So the point I'm making here is that is a very, very high-end command post exercise that we're doing in a joint, combined, and multinational environment in Japan. We're no longer doing warfighters anymore as just solely an Army event. Doesn't replicate the way we're going to have to operate out here. We have to operate with our partners, our allies, and we have to operate as a joint multinational and combined force. Next build. JPMRC, I'll just make one more comment on this. For those that are aware, or may not have been aware, the training areas here in Hawaii are actually critical to us, but there's more to it than that. We have PMRF on Kauai, Kwajalein, for those that are aware of the Army presence in Kwajalein, really, really important site. And then all the way out in the second island chain, whether it's Palau, Northern Marianas, or Guam. But I'll just give you one, quick scenario. 14 aircraft leave Alaska, put an airborne force into Pohakaloa training area. Rangers come out and do a raid, link up. Forces move from Oahu to the Big Island. The Rangers then got in other aircraft, flew out to Palau with HIMARS and did a live high-range shot with HIMARS out in Palau on the second island chain, okay? So if you think about the possibilities of training out here, they're extraordinary. The combinations are almost infinite. And for those that are not as familiar with Alaska, last year, again, the Yukon and Donnelly training area, some of you may be familiar with J-Park, that's an Army asset, okay? The Air Force has made big investments in Alaska. They were doing operations from the Yukon and Donnelly training area. Again, it's twice the size of the National Training Center. They're doing operations over the northern slope onto the Arctic Ocean, and they just recently did an operation out to Shemya Island with small form factors, space capabilities, HIMARS, Q-53 radar, and they're doing that in partnership with the Air Force. So these are really, really exciting things that we're doing out here. And again, this training center, in my view, is a central element to joint training. We no longer have a Joint Forces Command. We have to self-synchronize this stuff at the combatant command and component level. And this training center right here, in my view, is a game changer out here. Next slide. Last two I talked about. Pathways is basically our campaigning activities. You can see all the countries that's in, and those are basically the big joint ones. Again, there's more than 40 Army to Army and joint exercises that we do throughout the year. And then, of course, on the far right side, putting those capabilities in position. Again, command and control, protection, collection, and sustainment is really where you're going to get your extension of the joint force into the theater. And that operational endurance out here, back to my very first slide in history, we concede no domain and we concede no terrain. That is, I don't know how else to say it, but we cannot give up any ground out here. And by the way, we have 2 treaty allies in the first island chain. We have a treaty ally on the Asian continent in Korea, and we have a treaty ally down in the Australian continent. We have responsibilities to those allies to help them defend. Next slide. Last one, we've got to train in the environment and the conditions in this region. We have a responsibility to do defense support to civil authority, and be able to transition quickly to defend the homeland. Last year was a very taxing year for my headquarters. We had Typhoon Marawa rip through Guam, level 4 typhoon. Thank God the thing went quickly because the damage was pretty extreme. The day that force landed in Hawaii was the same day that the fires over in Maui ripped through Lahaina. And so we had to send a force over there with the Army Corps of Engineers and the great partnership that we have with the Hawaii National Guard and, in that case, the Guam National Guard. So another huge role that the Army of the Pacific plays. Linchpin service to the Joint Force, that's my shtick, and what I mean by that is, again, back to the 10 flag officer commands that I have here. Command and control, protection, collection, and sustainment. If you want it at scale and you want it at echelon, you're going to have to use the United States Army as part of the joint force to build that out. And then the last thing on the right, I'll just say, is my view is that the strategic land power network in the Indo-Pacific is actually the security architecture that binds this region together. Why? I'll tell you why. Japan, 65% of the Japanese military, Army. Philippines, 70% of the Philippine military, Army. They have more divisions than we have. India, 80% of its military, Army. Indonesia, 75%. Malaysia, 75%, Vietnam, 90%. I could go on and on and on. There is a reason why the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Navy are so important out here. They're important out here to keep the global commons safe, secure, and open. And that is what we cannot do. However, they can't do what we can do, which is to bind the strategic land power network together, because what's happening out here is the Chinese are violating the national sovereignty and the territorial integrity of these countries, and their countries are largely turning to their armies, which is the largest part of their security sector, and say, how are we going to secure our air littorals and our maritime littorals with our Army forces? And they turn to the United States Army of the Pacific to try to advise, help, assist, train, and show them new capabilities, new concepts, new ways of operating, new organizations, new technologies. This is an important point of the security architecture out here. When I mean by the Strategic Land Power Network, I'm talking about the U.S. Army of the Pacific, I'm talking about the U.S. Marine Corps, I'm talking about the Special Operations Forces that are out here operating. But the biggest part of the Strategic Land Power Network are all those armies that I just rattled off. That's where trust comes, that's where readiness is created, that's where relationships are advanced and fostered. And that's how we're going to end up being in a position to deter. And if that deterrence fails, we have to be in a position to fight and win. Last slide. There's a QR code there for industry. Please get it. We'll log you into our, if you will, a library that we have. And I have a concepts division that brings all that in, and then we can, talk a little more detail about the things that we can work together on. And with that, I'll stop there and take any questions that you have of me. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. We do have some questions from the audience. The first question: how is the U.S. Army Pacific integrating new technologies such as AI, robotics, and autonomous systems to enhance security in the Pacific theater?
So first, in my headquarters, as I said, we stood up a concepts directorate to be, if you will, a catcher's mitt or a clearinghouse to bring a number of these things together. I would also tell you that for those that are not aware, some of you are probably aware of the multi-domain task forces that we have operating out here, but there's other organizational changes going on that I think are equal to, if not more important than that. So in my headquarters, there's 3 organizations that have been added that we're creating and we're building and integrating into our operational construct. First is the Theater Fires Element. Next is a Theater Information Advantage Directorate. And next is a Theater Space and Strike Effects Group. The sum total of those 3 elements is about 225 people that will be added to my headquarters. To do what? To do lethal and non-lethal targeting, to bring the capabilities of the multi-domain task forces and the corps and the divisions together to be able to see, make sense, understand, and then to gain and maintain contact in all the domains, be able to collect, synthesize, fuse, and then conduct lethal, non-lethal targeting to protect, defend, or conduct offensive operations. I would tell you at the operational and theater level, that's probably the most organizational change that I've seen in my time in the Army, and it's happening right here in this theater Army, in this theater, and that's just the operational and strategic, theater strategic level organizational adjustments that are going on from the multi-domain task forces to the theater Army. headquarters. Below that, there's another tactical that General George, as Chief of Staff of the Army, is talking about, this transformation and contact. That's a division and below level organizational change that's happening. The first division, first of two, the Pacific Division that's doing is the 25th Division. And that is converting the two brigades to be a lighter MTOW, but also it's the conversion of the Division Artillery, the Division Combat Aviation Brigade, the Division Sustainment Brigade, the new IEW, which is an Intelligence Electronic Warfare Battalion, Signal Battalion, Engineer Battalion, to be able to insert new technologies, new capabilities, make them lighter, make them more mobile, make them more lethal, and allow them an organizational construct that is an easier fit when you have to take tactical formations, and let's just say the high-end tactical formation is the division headquarters, and plug that into a core, which is could be a JTF, or allow it to enable or fight with or alongside multi-domain task forces, which is absolutely a operational level organization to the theater army. So there's sort of two parts to that innovation of technologies, concepts, and capabilities coming together. First is at the division and below right here with the 25th Division, and the second is at the operational and theater level, primarily in my headquarters, and that is also with the multi-domain task forces that we have, one stationed here and one at Joint Base Lewis McChord. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. The next audience question. How is the Army funding and prioritizing modernization of the Indo-Pacific force structure to enable and ensure strategic deterrence in an increasingly enabled A2AD Indo-Pacific theater?
Force structure. So if I cover that part of the question, I just talked about the force structure. So a couple of force structure changes that I give great credit to the Army in doing. So I just talked about the theater fires element, theater information advantage, the theater strike space effects group, the multi-domain task forces, of which there's two. There'll be a third one in the future. Composite watercraft company that we put in Japan. Second one coming. There's new vessels here. The Security Force Assistance Brigade before all of this, has been operating throughout the theater routinely in somewhere between 7 to 10 countries, depending on time of the year and capacity to do it. Those are force structure things. I would tell you from a funding standpoint, we have been the beneficiary of an increase in campaigning funds to operate across the region. Now, it's not come easy. It comes at challenging times because of the demands for a couple of years now in Europe and more recently in Europe and the Middle East. But primarily, we're doing it with assigned forces, again, that we task organize, and then we compete in the Army's budget for campaigning dollars, and U.S. Indo-PACOM has been very good and positive in advocating for that on the Hill, so we've gotten additional dollars to do that, and we need it. We need that money. You know, as the service without a ride, transportation is a big part of our bill. But I would also tell you that, and I remind people all the time, when you move the Army, you exercise TRANSCOM, DLA, SDDC, you exercise your medical command and reach. You have to aggregate forces, disaggregate forces, reaggregate forces. You have to, you do port opening of both airfields and seaports. You've got to do the coordination with local police, local equivalents of the FAA and the FCC. You got to know where the hospitals are in order to get off of those ports and get out into tactical assembly areas. We do that in foreign countries. This is not like going to the National Training Center and not like going to JRTC. This is a totally different game out here. So the ability for us to actually move into the theater, that is a tactical action that's solving an operational and strategic challenge. And the strategic and operational challenge out here is conducting strategic movement into this theater, so then you have the ability to conduct operational maneuver once you're inside the theater. And most of that operational maneuver has to take place inside the second island chain, throughout the first island chain, and in and around the Asian continent. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. We have time for 2 more questions. Next question. With the rise of cyber threats and disinformation campaigns, how is the Army integrating cyber defense into its efforts to maintain both regional security and an open, cooperative environment?
So this is one of the areas that, first of all, I'll just say there's a real thirst from each of the countries in the region for cyber defense. For those that may or may not be aware, we've worked with the Japanese. We've actually opened up a cyber range for training in Japan. And I'll keep my answer short here just so we can get to the next one in respect for time. Every pathways exercise, there is an element that goes in, and this is not because, although we enjoy having those teams there, this is largely because the countries are asking for it. We bring those teams in and they'll do, I'll say, advise, assist, and TTP sharing work with the nations that we're operating with. Some of these environments are obviously more, I'll say, threatened or penetrated than others, but the fact of the matter is there's a recognition in each one of the countries that they've got some protect and defend skills that are lacking. They have some protect and defend technologies that they need, and then I'll just say the real gains that we make are like, how do you organize a team to do that? And I think one of the great special powers that we have when we go into the region, particularly as an Army force, is to help them organize properly to do these things. And you can have all the great technology in the world and have a ton of capabilities, but if you don't have an organization that can actually do it, it won't matter. And I think one of the benefits that we offer is for our ability to work with them and say, this is how you could organize it, this is the echelon you need to organize it, and here's its task, here's its purpose, here's its mission, and then here's an organizational construct that you might consider following. And then oftentimes now that takes you into a different space where there's a trust factor, and then next year or throughout, they want those teams to come back so they can increase their skills, increase their proficiency, and increase the capability that they have. So it's largely through our campaigning efforts and Operation Pathways Forward.
Thank you very much, sir. One more audience question for you. How do unmanned surface vehicles fit into your watercraft requirements and problem sets, like contested logistics and long-range fires? What type of USVs do you need?
So we're doing some work with unmanned surface vessels. What I would tell you is I think that you all know that technology is already out there. We remind people all the time that we have unmanned surface vehicles that are doing, or vessels that are doing operations in the Gulf out to oil rigs. We have some unmanned vehicles that we've taken into the region Most of those are being tested. Some are being tested up here at the 25th. Some are going to be tested up with the 11th Airborne in Alaska. But, you know, throughout this region, we need your help on unmanned surface vessels and unmanned surface vehicles. Last year, we did a HIMARS shot in Palau with an automated launcher. That's another capability that we've tested out here. We need to continue to test that out here. And there's just great opportunities to be able to use these in the various training exams out here. I don't have any specifics that I'm going to go into on that particular. I mean, we just need industry's help with it.
Okay, thank you, sir. That was our final question.
Okay.
Please welcome to the stage Brigadier General Paul Fredenberg, U.S. Army, retired AFCEA Executive Vice President.
All right, General Flynn, on behalf of AFCEA International, on behalf of AFCEA Hawaii, we greatly appreciate the time you took to spend with us here today. And you talked a little bit about what the Army is doing in this theater and how the Army fits into that joint, combined, and multinational solutions that are required to meet the specific challenges in the Indo-Pacific environment and to deter and counter the adversaries that we face in this theater. And we greatly appreciate you talking a little bit about and answering our questions about some of the specific capabilities from a technology perspective that are required. And I hope our industry partners noticed that he gave you the link to his priority challenge areas that he could use some help from industry on here, and his focus areas. We concede no domain. We concede no terrain. And we will not do that in this theater without the land forces and our Army leading the synchronization and coordination across that effort. So thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. 1 second. As a thank you, we're going to provide a donation to the Windward Wounded Warriors, the Friends of the Windward Wounded Warriors. And I also want to present you with this highly coveted TechNet Indo-Pacific Challenge coin, celebrating our 39th year here at TechNet Indo-Pacific. Please, ladies and gentlemen, please hold on for just a second. Our MC is going to come up and he's going to talk about some specific events that you're not going to want to miss here today. Thank you.
Thank you, General Flynn, for that insightful presentation. Before we depart, I would like to encourage you to download the AFCEA TechNet Indo-Pacific 2024 app for a listing of all our events during the conference. SD3IT is providing parking validation at booth 834. Please stop by and get your parking validated by 4 p.m. Thank you, SD3IT. At 1400, we'll be presenting our industry panel, AI/ML as a warfighting advantage, in room 310. All are encouraged to attend. At 1500, the J6 breakout session titled The Foundation Weapon System, How Networks and Data Power Joint and Combined Operations, in room 308 AB. Lastly, at 1530 to 1700, there will be an AFCEA networking reception on the exhibit floor. The AFCEA Hawaii STEM grant and scholarship application season opens with TechNet and runs through April 26, 2025. The application is available on Scholars App at scholarapp.com. The link can also be found on the AFCEA Hawaii website, afceahawaii.org. Thank you for attending.
In 1597, Francis Bacon coined the phrase, "Knowledge is power." Data is not a currency to store and never use. Knowledge must become action. Applied data insights result in better lives, national security, and innovation. The possibilities are endless. The accumulation and application of knowledge has expanded from a few scholars to entire populations. Knowledgeable citizens have created improved technologies, gained scientific insights, and established new nations. Today's decision makers must convert knowledge to action quickly, securely, and accurately, while not becoming overwhelmed by a torrent of data. SAIC connects you with the right data for the right people at the right time, helping you make informed decisions. Citizen data scientists go from collecting knowledge to knowing what actions to take for quick and effective outcomes in any domain.